So 6 weeks ago, sorry, 12 weeks ago. 12 weeks ago I was in England, and I was there for verschiedene reasons. One of them is a bit unusual, and I'm not even sure if I should be being megala this to you, but when I lived, I maybe should give a bit of a background to this. When I used to live in England, I used to broadcast regularly on BBC, national radio and TV. This was with the encouragement and the brocha of the Getzed Rov, Rabbi Rakov, and they thought it was important, if you were going to have a voice that's got the title rabbi, that the 65 million people who live in the country are going to hear, it's better that it's an orthodox voice than the alternatives which so often you hear when you switch on the radio. So the Getzed Rov, Rabbi Rachel Zechazal Livrocha, encouraged me to do this, and I used to regularly be on BBC radio and TV. And when I was going to be back there a few weeks ago, there was a fellow who became a Baal Teshuvah, and he was a famous writer for the BBC. And he put together a show for the BBC, and it was called God Laughed. And it was to be a quiz show. I don't know exactly if this is any sort of dimion at all to you here, Stam in America and Befrat in such a choshev oilam. But radio is big in the UK. People listen to the radio a lot. And they've got all sorts of quiz shows and things. This was a quiz show, a funny quiz show on the subject of religion. And there would be two teams. Two teams were myself and a Christian, and a Muslim and an atheist. And they asked us all sorts of questions, and it was to be jolly, it was to be Leibedik. So my son, it was in Yerushalayim, he listened to this just 2 days ago, and he said it was very interesting. I mean, all the others, the Christian, the Muslim, the atheist, and the chairperson, were all professional stand-up comedians. And me. So it was to be Leibedik, but at the same time, you had to represent your religion. And he said, my son gave me a shvach that you weren't as funny as the rest of them, but you made more of a kovod for what you were trying to say, so I was really quite pleased with that. And it was, I have to admit, I was very mesupik whether I should do this. This was a bit different. It was in front of an audience of 200 people. And, but it came out gavaldik, it was really quite fun, I must admit. Soft golf, soft, I enjoyed it. My normal things, when I was living in England, was I used to broadcast in the largest radio show there, and TV shows, and as a consequence of this, Her Majesty the Queen, bless her, who's 89, I discovered today, came to Manchester 5 years ago, just before I moved to America, and she was presented to the Jewish community, and the president of the Jewish community shook hands with her. I'm not going to go into Heterium, Nishik, and Issa, and whatever. Soft called soft. When she shook hands with the president of the Manchester Jewish community, she said, "Is Rabbi YY here?" And he said, "No, ma'am." And she said, what a pity. We listen to him all the time on the radio, and we think he's awfully good. So how about that, Rabbi Sai, right? Nishkin normal rabbis you get here on Thursday night. Somebody the Queen thinks is awfully good. That was gewaldig, huh? And I must admit, I was really quite pleased to think of the Queen, Her Majesty the Queen of England, is a fan of mine, and she wanted to meet me. I moved to America to become a colonialist and a rebel, a revolutionary, so I missed out the Kovod that apparently was coming. I nearly became Sir Y.Y. Rubenstein. Rabbi Sir, how about that? Gavaldi, a knight. Why is this night different to all other nights? You might ask yourself, but you get the idea. So I didn't quite get, and I must admit, first of all, because I'm a darshan and I speak all over the world, and half of my time I'm speaking to people who are not quite as gelernt as the people I'm seeing here, it doesn't do any harm in your resume or to put in the posters, the Queen of England likes him. I mean, that encourages people to come a mall and hear a Yiddish Wort. But I must admit that I was a little bit disappointed that I came to America before I got the chance to meet Her Majesty, to do her the honor and make her feel good about meeting me, and maybe even become Rabbi Sir Y.Y. Rubenstein, which would be, sehr interessant. And 2 weeks ago, they announced the list of those people who are being honored. They apparently do this twice a year. And there was quite a couple of Yidden on this list that I saw. And one of them, Take, became a knight. Moreover, Rabbi say he's one of the most meanest people I've ever come across in my entire life. Nishkin Fruma, and a bald guy in Kamoihu. And I must admit, when I saw that, I thought, Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem, I didn't get that particular Kovod, because versteht sich, Rabbi say, not everybody who is a knight of the realm in England is exactly one of the Lamed Vov Tzadikim. Some of them have got particular problems, and they're not, we would not consider them to be the most refined of individuals. But it led me to think about this idea of Kovod and how Kovod works. So everybody knows in Pirkei Avos, in Perik Dalet, it says, Rebbe Lezer Kapar Oimer, Hakina v'ataiva v'kovod moitzinas odom min ha'olam. That taiva and kina and kovod is a one-way ticket to Gehenna. Not a good thing to have. So I declared exactly what is kovod and why is it such a bad thing. And then when I thought about the Mishnah, I thought, is there a tzad shova between them? Because it seems to be very different things. Kina, and then taiva, and then kovod. Taiva is takezer interessant. In the Siddur HaGro, when it says in our tefillas, Shema, when it says, Lo sesur achar levavchem, v'achrei nechem, says the Vilna Gaon Gimel Taivas ba'odam. There are 3 taivas a person has. And he says, chayfetz, chemda, and taiva. 3 different words. Chayfetz applies to achila. Baruch Hashem, we have cholent here. Chayfetz achila, chemda l'momen. The word chemda applies when a person has got a taiva for momen. And then he says, taiva l'znus. Taiva is the word that applies to znus. So we get 3 different words. Chayfetz, chemda, and taiva. So again, chayfetz for achila, chemda is for momen, and taiva is for znus. And he says, the taiva godel min hachemda, hachemda godel min hachayfetz. Of all human problems, taiva for znus is the worst. Interesting. So says the Vilna Gaon. So it's very, very stark. But I thought, is there a tzad shova? Kovod, I mean, taiva, we all understand what znus is. But kovod seems to be a very different thing. And kina seems to be a different thing. And yet, the Mishnah links them all together. And I want to taka, is there a tzad shova between the two? Are taka the all linked? So, here, taka interessant, Ramosha Feinstein says that of the 3 here, kina, taiva, and kovod, kovod's the worst. Ramosha Feinstein Paskins here, kovod's the worst. I'll read a little bit to you. He says, Sibas, he says, Hasina shebein odom l'chaveri. One of the greatest reasons that people hate each other, and of course we're now talking very near rather, not too far from Tisha B'Av, Sinas Skinam. So he says one of them is, says Ramosha Feinstein, the Yesodis HaMidas HaRois, these 3 Midas HaRois that are mentioned here, the Shlosha Midas HaRois hein Ovas HaTuma, Hakina v'Taiva v'Kovod, v'Alkein Hisker Rebbe Elazar Kapar Davka Oisen. That's why he mentions these 3. HaKovod hu Chama Mikulam, and Kovod is the worst of the 3. What's the connection between Taiva and Kina? For Shlomo Wolbe, he says that be'emes there is a connection between the 3. And what is the connection? So he says the following thing. He says, Taiva l'chevtzi aguf menugeget l'ashoras ha'odam ba'olam haruchni. When a person is a taiva for the desires, the physical desires of this world, automatically you're emphasizing the physical, and by so doing, you're de-emphasizing the spiritual. That taiva for all the things, the Vilna Gaon says, for achila, or whether it's for money, or whether it's this, they're all physical things. Automatically, you're disconnecting yourself from hashkafa towards ruchnius. And he writes the following thing. Mavinim ki amunah satayra. If you have amunah b'Torah, he hamunah b'metzia shel ruchnius. Automatically, mimela. That means that you have a connection and hashkafa which recognizes that there is such a thing as ruchnius. However, if you're emphasizing a taiva for things which are chaymer, whatever they are, you're disconnecting from that. What's kina? Is there a connection therefore? If we're now defining a taiva is disconnecting from ruchnius, now you see a tzad hashava, versteht sich, between kina and kovod. And it should be, I think, reasonable to understand exactly what that disconnection should be. Because what is kina? Kina is when you see in somebody else something that you don't have. Ultimately, if you believe that, you believe that the Rebbeinu Shalom has taken his eye off the ball. It's obvious to me that I should drive a Mercedes-Benz. And the fact that you drive a Mercedes-Benz and I drive a mere Honda, which is a Bush She'en Kamayu. I mean, when I lived in England, I drove a Volvo, Rabbi Sai. This is Yuridas Adoris. For me to come here and drive a Honda, gefährlich. And the fact I see that you drive a BMW, or you drive an Audi, or a Lexus, or whatever it is, and I am mechanic you, that means to say automatically, I'm saying the Rebbeinu Shalom's got it wrong, hasn't he? That's a miscalculation. You're giving that to him, I should have that. He doesn't deserve it, it's Rubinstein's. And versteht sich, that's a disconnection from what the Rebbeinu Shalom really wants. It's a huge miscalculation. And Kovod is interesting. Kovod, well, I'll let Rav Moshe Feinstein explain exactly what the problem is with Kovod. So we'll go back to Rav Moshe, and he says that Kovod, why it's so bad, the worst of all is somebody's a Baal Kovod. Especially when there's nothing that he should have a hashkafa to say that he's better than you. I deserve the Kovod, you don't deserve the Kovod. He believes I deserve it because I'm better than you. And the truth of the matter is you're not better than the other person at all. And automatically another tzad hashava when you're putting your hashkafa in front of the Rebbeinu Shalom's hashkafa. So it would come out, therefore, there would be a connection between all three. More than that, the first Manchester Rosh Yeshiva, and we'll be talking about the Manchester Rosh Yeshiva in just a few seconds, was something called Ritzi Hirsch-Ferber. Now, I have to tell you, I was saying a shir in Shar Yoshev, where I have the schus to give a shir, and there was an English rabbi I hadn't seen for quite a long time, and he came up to me, and I just happened to have one of these for him there. I said, I haven't seen that for years. You can't get that in America. I said, I know. That's why I brought it. Because everything he says is absolutely brilliant. And because nobody quotes it in America, because nobody's heard of the Sefer, people think you're brilliant. So it's an absolutely indispensable tool for people who want to show off and pretend that they're clever. He says a very interesting thing. The Mishnah says, Hakina, Hataiva, V'hakovod. Ha, ha, ha. When I say Hakina, Taiva, V'hakovod, but each one's got a hey. And he says something which is very interesting. Listen to this. He says, why it's got a hey? Yan b'shloshton yishsad heter lefoni. Because in all three, Kina, Taiva, and Kovod, there is a place, there is a time when these are appropriate and when it's correct to have such a thing. And he gives a couple of examples. For example, Kina. Well, we all know there's such a thing as Kina Seifrim. Kina Seifrim, Tarbi Chochma, says Birkei Avos. Although I have to tell you, the Ber Yosef, Rabbi Yosef Salant, says of all the mahalchim that a person may employ, could employ to go higher, avoid Kina. You see, if you are a rabbi and you see a rabbi who knows more than you, it's supposed to be an encouragement for you to learn more in order to get to that madriga. so you can be shova b'shova. There is, however, another way for you to be shova b'shova with somebody who's above you. Pull him down. Pull him off his pedestal. So kina is a very dangerous thing. Says Rabbi Yosef Salan, even though it can be used positively, it's too dangerous. Try and avoid using that one altogether. But zicher, it can be used positively. There's no shilas about that. And not only that, he says, for example, by Pesach Sheni. The Meiser of Pesach Sheni. When the Yidden came and said, why can't we have the opportunity? It's not our fault, we're Tommy, etc. They were Makana, those who were able to bring the Korban Pesach. So therefore, that's a positive kina. They want to go higher. And not only that, he says, but the kind of Rachel ba'achosa. When Rachel was jealous of Leah and all the babies that Leah was having, all the shvatim that Leah was having, it wasn't just she wanted to play babies and mummies. She wanted to bring a shevet to Klal Yisrael. That's a kina which is kosher. In that occasion, it can be kosher. Taiva seems to be a maguna dikazach, something that's not so good. However, v'yish taivas mishvochas k'mosh kosav Hashem nedecha chol taivosi. As the Pasuk says, all my taivas should be towards you, Hashem. I should desire you. And Kovod, well, the kind of kosher is a Kovod. It can be that Kovod is something you want in order that you will be superior to somebody else. I demand you stand up for me when I come into a room. That sort of thing. Which is a terrible, terrible thing. And it's a one-way ticket to Gehenna. But if you chase after Kovod, it'll run away from you. Such a person. I think I once told you, one of my Talmidos, when I used to teach in seminary, he said, I'm Mori de Kazakh. You know, Chazal say, anybody who chases after Kovod runs away from you. And anybody who runs off, anybody who runs away from Kovod, it chases after you. So this young lady said something very brilliant. So mamonashach. Whichever way you look at it, you're stuck. If you're chasing after Kovod, here's Kovod, you're chasing after it, it's running away from you. If you're running away from Kovod, it's chasing after you. So whichever way you look at it, you're the same distance apart, whether you're running after it or you're running away from it. And she said something absolutely brilliant. She said, yeah, but when you get old, you slow down. And if you've been chasing it all your life, then you slow down and it gets further and further away from you. But if you've been running away from it all your life, then you slow down and it catches you up. Like a Valdic! Beautiful vor. So Kovod, like such a Kovod, that's not so good. Yesh Kovod, a royal lirdaf, but there is a sort of Kovod that is appropriate to chase after. And what is that? He says that sort of Kovod is going to cause a yigba liba bedarch Hashem, a heart that's proud and is full of Kovod because he is a frumir and somebody who chases after Hashem in the proper way. That's the sort of Kovod you can have. So the reason it says 3 hays, hakina hatayva Kovod, is because there is an aspect of it which is taka appropriate. It can be okay. So there is in Perik Daled another mimer, and the mimer says ma'oid heavy shafal ruach. A person always has to be shafal ruach, and yet we just learned from Siher Schwerber. He says a mole, it's appropriate. So the default position for Yid is always to keep away from Kovod. It's a dangerous thing. A mole, it's appropriate. A mole, it's appropriate. But Kovod is a terrible thing, and it's a one-way ticket to Gehenna. So far, so good. And then there's a Rabbi Dessler. Rabbi Dessler in Michtam Elio has a famous essay on page 99, and the essay is called HaMoshel v'Hanimshel. HaMoshel v'Hanimshel. How would you describe a moshel? How would you teach moshel? A parable. Do you think any goyim know what parable means? Go out into the street and say the word parable. It's an old-fashioned word. What's a parable? Yeah, you're translating it very good. Translate parable for me. What's a parable? Moshel. There's always an anti-Semite comes into this show. How would you translate taka a moshel? Sorry? An example? That'd be a dugma, wouldn't it? So I translate it, or Rabbi Dessler is translating it here, I think, is a pretense. A mashal is always a pretense. There was a king. Incidentally, it's time for us to update our mashalim. I'm sick to death of kings. Right? There was a king, who had a prince. No. Says Rabbi Dessler, there was never a king. He never lived in this particular country. He never had a prince. The prince never went off the derrick. Well, fine. But therefore, what it is be'emes, we know for Shtetzach, a mashal is an idea, a picture, a story to illustrate a difficult idea. The difficult idea is the nimshal. So the mashal is the pretense. Let's pretend there was a king. And then you've got the idea that the real point you're trying to get across. So mashal is pretense, and nimshal is the reality. Would that be fair enough? Listen to Rabbi Dessler. A mashal who's sipar devorim shelo hoya v'lo nivro. A mashal is a story about something that never took place, it never happened. The call to Elisha boy and the whole purpose and function of a mashal. Call ha'emes v'metzias asher boy. Its reality, its function, its purpose is hu rak b'ma v'ad kama. It's in as much, only as much as shu nesio la'shaymim lahasigas animshal. That it helps the person hearing the mashal to understand the point it's trying to illustrate. Does that make sense? He says, Mi'ato ma nemer ala odam hayotzi mi beis hamedrash. What could you say about a person who learnt in yeshivas their whole life, or learnt in kollel, ave'ein b'yodoi ela hamoshel, and he exits and all he's ever mastered is the moshel, never quite got the nimshal. All he can do is pretend. He can't be real. I think that's a phrase we use these days. Be real. Be real. Right? This guy can't be real. What is he talking about? He says, if this is a weird idea, he wants to say, Almam Chalesh, and of course we're talking written in the 1960s. I think Ben Benoshel Kal V'chomer, what he's going to explain to us is far more shaykh to today's times than it was then. Halusha zu, this particular weakness, this mishagas, shall achizas ha-moshel v'azivas ha-nimshel, of holding on to the moshel and never letting go of the nimshel, he matzoi b'chaya odom yosem asher hoime ala adatenu. It's much more common than you would imagine. And he says an interesting thing. He says, imagine, and he gives a moshel. Imagine you've got a child playing in a cardboard box. Let's say you got an air conditioner portable air conditioner arrives from UPS. You take it out and there's the box there. Now, if you're a little boy, then you climb into the box. Says Rabbi Dessler, now the box that he's in is a ship. Or it can be an airplane. Hu atzmaya cabinet. And he himself, he's the captain. And he says, and when he's playing as the captain of the airplane, Hari hadimin be'enev k'metzias. Do you remember when you were little guys? Is this not true? You were the captain of the ship, right? Or the boat. And you go, little boys are going, they're an airplane. I mean, you look at it today and you think, that's ridiculous, right? But in the eyes of a child, he's an airplane. Poshut. When you mature a little bit, when you get to be a teenager, you're not, you stop being an airplane. But you're still playing a lot of games, you're still doing a lot of pretense. And then he says, he says, I'll miss that a little bit before that. Imagine somebody who it's quite clear, because he's been to Shirim, and because he's learned Pirkei Avos, and because he's learned what Relezer Kappa said, that Kovod is a one-way ticket to Gehenna, and he believes that, Mika Mokam, Nenu. Oh, but it's Geschmack. But it's Geschmack when you walk into a room and people stand up for you. And people say, oh, you're the famous Rabbi Cohen, or you're the famous fellow who's got this big property, or whatever it is. This is Geschmack. Isn't it gewaldig that everybody thinks you're the bee's knees? That you're the we like you. God, I heard you did this and you did that. It's Geschmack. And it upsets you if people don't recognize the incredible worth that you, the self-worth that you believe that you possess. So says Rabbi Dessler. This is important. Says Rabbi Dessler, but what's the point of this? What's the point of other people thinking you're choshev? Other people thinking you are important and significant? That you can see that other people think you're great. Kovod halmiti. Surely proper kovod, and that would be kovod which is acceptable, kovod that you should strive for. Hi hakashivas amayla mitzad atzmo. That is that you take our choshev. Whether or not people know you're choshev, that's irrelevant. Glasgow, where I come from in Scotland, Rabbi Dessler once came to Glasgow, and he was there over Shabbos. I'm not sure of the details, and he was collecting for Koilel, the famous Gateshead Koilel. And he was in a shul, in fact, it was my late wife's shul, it used to be called Queen's Park. And they said to this fellow, this frummer from Gateshead, Glasgow wasn't a very frum place, who are you? Now he could have said, I'm Rabbi Dessler. I created Gateshead Koilel, I created Gateshead Girls Seminary, v'chulu, v'chulu, v'chulu. He said, I'm the shamash of the Gateshead Synagogue. I'm the shamash of the Gateshead Synagogue. And of course, they treated him as though he was the shamash of the Gateshead Synagogue, right? With all sorts of bizyonis and treated him badly. Why didn't he turn around and say, I'm the famous Rabbi Dessler? Because he doesn't need them to know that he's the famous Rabbi Dessler. What's important is that he is choshev. Whether other people know or not is irrelevant. But so many people look for kovod in the eyes of others, or through the eyes of others. If you've got that, if you are important, what difference does it make other people know? If you don't have it, and if you're not choshev, what do you possibly gain that other people think that you are choshev? And then he says, there are some people who are even worse at deceiving themselves, still playing games. It's back to being the kid. The kid's the captain and this is the ship. No, it's not, it's a box. It's just a cardboard box. But some people go through life wanting other people to think I'm choshev and I'm not choshev. Let's play. You might as well go around going, you guys are sugar. Aber it's geschmack. It was geschmack when you were the captain of the airplane. It's geschmack other people think you're choshev. But you're just playing a game. Says Rabbi Dessler, there are some people that are even worse. If you've deceived other people and they think you're choshev, it's very easy to deceive yourself and think you're choshev. But there are some people it's even worse. And that is, they pursue games, playing with their life, a game their entire life. It's even worse, a worse pretense. What's that? For me, shekaina lo kovod bekesef. People who see themselves as being choshev through the eyes of other people by having bought the eyes of other people through their checkbook. Listen to the lashon. It's very harsh. Says Rabbi Dessler, Hakol yodim. Everybody knows. And sometimes even the guy himself. Other people are not interested bekvoidoi, ela bekaspoi. Very harsh. But what is the point of having kovod which is false, which is nonsense? Surely real kovod is real kovod. That you've made yourself a kovod dikemensch. So, I didn't meet the queen, which is a terrible tragedy for her. But when I thought about it, the emes, when I saw one of these particular people who'd been honored by the queen and became a knight, or all sorts of different things they can give you, OBE, MBE, member of the British Empire, order of the British Empire, all sorts of posh stuff. When I chapped, and even though I've used it in my resumes, it looks good in the posters when I'm speaking, if I'm in Florida or California or wherever I'm speaking in the world, the Queen likes me. Last week, I chapped the same thing. Just like Rabbi Dessler says, the problem is, if you keep buying people's respect, then you actually stupidly believe that you're worthy of the respect and forget that you actually paid the money. I suddenly chapped. I've been telling people for the last 10 years that the Queen likes me. And it's a good shtick, and we all laughed. You know, is Rabbi Wai here? And I thought to myself, Yehuda Yoina, are you taka now got to the stage where you taka thinks that's something very choshev? Where you actually believe it. You're telling other people. So maybe you think it's choshev. And it certainly isn't. And especially when I saw the sort of people that were becoming knights, I thought, you, Rubenstein, you idiot. You are mamish crazy. That's not chashivas. That's not chashivas in the slightest. In fact, the Manchester Rosh Hashiva, Rabbi Siegel, and we all know I've spoken to you about many times before, and he was a real tzaddik. One of his talmidim was going to be given an honor by the Queen. Because the Queen's been there for a long time on the throne. And they were going to make him, I think, a lord. Gewaldig. A lord! I only aspired to being a knight. I didn't quite see myself as being a lord. But they wanted to make him a lord. Incidentally, B'nai Klal, they only give you these things if you're very rich. Anyway, Sof called Sof. He came to the Manchester Rosh Hashiva, Rabbi Siegel, and asked him, should he accept this choshev thing? Lord Rubenstein, gewaldig, right? And the Manchester Rosh Hashiva said to him, I can only tell you one thing. The Kovod you get by Olam Hazeh is detracted from the Kovod you get in Olam Haba. That means say that false Kovod that you get down here, then it's taken away from you that the Kovod you get upstairs in Shemayim. Boop. And of course, he accepted the Kovod and became a lord, which is really, really rather sad. And I think I may have told you once that I went to see the Manchester Rosh Hashiva because I used to run an organization and I wanted him to come to speak. It was a ladies' organization. We used to give shirim every Sunday night. Manchester Rosh Hashiva's son-in-law, a wonderful Yid called Rav Moshe Kupitz, Diane Westheim, big Talmud Chacham in the Manchester Beis-Din, and me, I'd come up with the idea of a seminary for ladies, particularly ladies who are balas teshuva, who had not had the opportunity to get to seminaries like their daughters were now in, so that they felt unmenschlich, they felt bad about themselves. So I wanted to give them a chinuch. So it wasn't just a shir, so it was like seminary once a week. We started with 180 ladies. In Baruch Hashem, in the 5 years we ran it, was very matzliach. And I went to see the Manchester Rosh Hashiva to ask him if taka he would come and speak at the siyum that we're having at the end of the year. I arrived at the Manchester Yeshiva, and there were 3 people who had appointments there to see the Rosh Hashiva already. One was from New York, one was from Eretz Yisrael, and one had come up from London. And they all had appointments. The Rosh Hashiva in his little office, he had a bed in there and he used to go for a shlof after mincha, for afternoon seder, and he was a little bit late. So they all explained they had appointments, and we all had a sefer. And eventually one of the guys plucked up courage and he opened the door and he peeked in. And there was the Manchester Rosh Hashiva. And the Manchester Rosh Hashiva had woken up, and he closed the door. He's just going to the Beis HaKisi, and then he'll be able to, then he's taking us in. The door opened after a few minutes, and the Manchester Rosh Hashiva looked out, and he liked me. I felt sorry for me, wanted to. And he looked over and he gave me a little nod, and he's very small, Manchester Rosh Hashiva, and I gave a little nod back. And the first person, the fellow from New York, he came in first. And the door closed. And a few seconds later, the Manchester Rosh Hashiva opened the door, and he said, Rebbe Yehuda Yoina. That's a bit of a joke, gentlemen. Rebbe Yehuda Yoina. Kimter. So I went over to him, he said, are you saying shiurim today? And I said, yes, Rosh Hashiva. So he turned around to the other fellow and said, Rabbi Rubenstein is saying shiurim today, he has to come in first. Psst. Gewaldig. Rabbi said, I nearly floated in. Wow. These guys have appointments. They come from Israel and New York. Who's going in first? Me. In I went. So he said, Rebbe Yehuda Yoina, I've just been to the Beis HaKisi. I just have to make an asher yotza. sit down. So, big long table, sat there, and to make the Asher Yotze, he opened the Seder. He turns to it, and this is exactly what he did. Forgive the histrionics, but I want you to understand exactly what happened. He started to chuckle when he looked at the first word. Then he closed his eyes like this, and he started to cry. Baruch. And then he translated Baruch into Yiddish. I think, honestly, if I remember rightly, it took him 8 minutes to say Asher Yotze. A few seconds before, I was feeling quite the knacker. A few seconds later, I was feeling quite the goy. What kavanah do I... If I'm being honest, I mean, I normally say, I just had this a few days ago, I normally say, what kavanah do I regularly put into Asher HaKol? I buy a bar of chocolate, an unfortunate habit of mine, and I break off a piece of chocolate. Now, there's a bracha to make. Shakal ni bivra. Now, I don't know how long it took the Manchester Rosh Yeshiva to say Shakal ni bivra. It takes me about 2 seconds. And my kavanah is totally focused on the chocolate. Chocolate, right? What to the kavanah? Right? And when the Manchester Rosh Yeshiva, incidentally, in Igros Moshe, there's a whole shaila there whether you can translate, be mafsik in the bracha, to translate it into Yiddish. And very interesting, the Lashon, it doesn't say who it is, but it's the Manchester Rosh Yeshiva. Moshe Feinstein says that's, for most people, for normal people, you couldn't do such a thing, but a tzaddik like him is a little bit different. And in Yeshiva, there's a rabbi in Shar Yoshev, a wonderful, lovely fellow called Rabbi Mejerovic, and he gave me this. And this is a letter which was sent from Mir after the Patira of Rabbi Yerucham. Rabbi Yerucham was the teacher of the Manchester Rosh Yeshiva, my Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Leib Gurovitz's teacher. And it was a letter that was sent to the, you can see it was, what do you call those, Gestetner? Remember those old Gestetner machines? So it was so badly done, it's that way, you read it that way. And at the end of it, it's so cute, it's the rabbis, Rabbi Shane, Rabbi Malin, and the address in Poland that it was done and sent. If people, the tzarche atzos had the fus obeis and the cost of the printing and the stamp that they sent to the Talmidim of Mir, who are now living in Eretz Yisrael, I'll call echod lishlach dollar echod. Do you think maybe people could send $1 to cover the cost of sending this letter to the Talmidim of the Mir who'd settled in America? And in this here, there was a whole explanation as to what takonas they should have to take on in order to make sure that they don't lose the Yiddishkeit and they don't get lost. And here is interessant. It says that one of the takonas is L'slamed bekavona brocha rishona kedim. So the first bracha of the Shemona Esrei, you have to learn exactly the halachas of the kavonas of the first bracha. And then in the next thing it says, L'slamed bebrocha rishona b'menuchas hamachshava. To say the first bracha of the Shemona Esrei, b'menuchas hamachshava, haina shi omer kol teva v'teva v'vnei atzma. You should say every single one of the words bifnei atzma, ba'ofen k'sha'om baruch, and the ofen that when you say baruch, yehei be'enav ke'ilo ein olav l'sbalo rak teva zois. It should be in your mind that the only thing you have to say, the only thing that you've got to say, is that and nothing else. That and nothing else. And I chap, that's where the Manchester Rosh Yeshiva got this minhag from. The be'emes, you're supposed to concentrate on just what that word, baruch. What does baruch mean? Learn the kavanah of baruch. You all know here that what baruch means. I mean, you don't need me to tell you what baruch really means is a velt, and what baruch means, there's a whole shir on what baruch means. And I thought this is a gewaldige zach. That's where the Manchester Rosh Yeshiva got this. And in Obus, in Perek Gimel, it says an incredibly interesting thing when it comes to Kovod. It says that Rebbe Levitas Omer, Perik Dalad, Ishavna Omer, Ma'oid heavy shafel ruach. You should always be somebody who's extremely humble. You should always be extremely humble. More than that, it's very interessant that the Vilna Gaon, he says, quotes the Rashi in this. What does it mean that you should always be extremely humble? So says the Vilna Gaon, there's another Mishnah. And the other Mishnah is, if you are considered choshev in the eyes of other people, then, in the eyes of other people, we need to know what other people means in a second, then you're considered choshev in the eyes of Hashem Yisbarach, which seems to be what we were talking about before. But I thought it was choshev. I must admit, I thought for a second that it was choshev that the queen wanted to meet me. But moreover, Rabbi said, you know what was choshev? The fact that the Manchester Rosh Yeshiva liked me. That's chashivas. The fact that the Manchester Rosh Yeshiva had a reasonably high opinion of Yehuda Yonah Rubinstein, is there anything better than that? The fact that Ramat Sio gave me a skamas for my sorim, that's choshev, that's kashivas. The fact that I was close to Rebbe Gurovitz and Rebbe Lapian, that I had the great exclusive being, that's kashivas. These are malachim. These are Hashem Yisborach. That's the sort of person you have to consider and be kol sharuach habriyos, it says in Pirkei Avos, and Gimel and Yud. Kol ruach, whenever it says kol ruach habriyos is not yemena, when other people think you're choshev and like you, then they're a bunch of them. What does briyos mean? Says Rashi, the choshev of the generation. If the choshev of the briyos refers to, doesn't mean ordinary people. Rabbi Akiva was a Rosha before he was a tzaddik. Remember Rabbi Akiva said, if I saw a Talmud Chacham, I hated them so much, I'd want to bite them, not the way that a dog bites. A dog only tears the flesh. The way that a donkey bites, it tears the flesh and breaks the bones. That's how much Rabbi Akiva hated Talmidei Chachamim. And the Sforim say, he was the leader of the anti-Haredi movement. That means to say that the Brios, ordinary people, other people must have thought he was quite the Kanaka, this anti-Semite. So Zikr not talking about that. Brios, says Rashi, refers to the Chashuvi Adar. If the Gedolim have a high opinion of you, that's Kovod. They're just ordinary stamp people? No. The fact that Manchester Yeshiva had a high opinion of me, that's got the Queen. I mean, I'm not Chas Shalom. Kovod Melech is an important zach, and she's certainly a very fine lady. But Be'emes, in a world free from Dimion and playing games, the one that's really important is to be in the eyes of the Chashuvi Adar. One last idea, but what's really most important? It's to be choshev in the eyes of Hashem Yisborach. So the letter from the Talmidim of Rabbi Yerucham to the Talmidim of the Mir, which I think the Manchester Rosh Yeshiva, this was the basis of him splitting up every word, Baruch, and translating it and crying over every single word. I thought to myself when I saw that letter, I've got to try that. Not the crying thing, I'm not sure I can manage that, but concentrating every word. And I've been giving Shiri, Justin, what does Baruch mean? Like Nefesh HaChaim explains. Baruch means to increase and to make a blessing. Is a person, when you're saying this, you've got to say to yourself, am I a source of blessing? Am I increasing blessing of Hashem Yisborach in the world? Am I a Kiddush Hashem? Or Rahman al-Islam, not a Kiddush Hashem. There's a lot to say in the word Baruch. So I said Baruch. I think I paused, I thought about it, just got to concentrate on the first bracha. And then this word, fine. I managed Baruch. I get stuck at the next word. What's the next word? Did that strike you ever as strange at all? If, I've not actually met the Rav of the Shul here. If the Rav of the Shul comes in now, we would all stand up, would we not? I would hope so. And if you asked, does the Rav want to, you would say, does the Rav would like to have a seat, please? Or your Rosh Hashiva. I don't know who your Rosh Hashiva was. When you ask him a question, how do you say it? May I ask the Rosh Hashiva, does the Rosh Hashiva think? And indeed, when you speak to a king, incidentally, when you do meet the Queen, you don't say, hello, Elizabeth. You say, hello, Your Majesty. And after that, it's ma'am. Can I do this? Ma'am. You don't say to her, hello, Liz. But Hashem Yisborach, you say Ato. Ato. You wouldn't say to your Rav, what do you think? Where are you going? Where's the Rav going? Where's the Rosh Hashiva going? We speak in the third person about a Rav, a Rosh Hashiva, a Rebbe, a Tzaddik. But to Hashem Yisborach, you. Baruch Ato. And I get stuck. I found it difficult to say Ato. I almost cried. How can me, a shmata like me, to say to Hashem Yisborach, blessed are you? I wouldn't say it to my Rosh Hashiva. Somebody told me, and I've not found this inside, but the Kovod Chaim says, it's an indication of how choshev you are in the eyes of Hashem Yisborach, that he gives you the Kovod of allowing you to call him you. So you wouldn't say it to Rosh Hashiva, who you have to have Kovod for. You wouldn't say it to a Rebbe. You wouldn't say it to a Tzaddik. But somebody else you must, al pi halacha, have Kovod for if you want arichas yomim. You do say it to. Who do you say it to? Exactly, your father. They'll say, would father like a piece of cholent? Would you like a piece of cholent, Tati? You! Because he's your father. Because he loves you. And then we can speak a little bit more informally. Hashem, you know what's really exciting? Not the fact that the Queen wanted to meet me. The fact that the Manchester Shiva liked me. That's choshev. But far more important, Hashem Yisborach likes me. I know that. He says I can call him you. Avinu Malkeinu. Of course he's the king. But before he's the king, he's Avinu. That's chashivas. That you can have Kovod for. The fact that I, and you, all of us, as Bnei Yisrael, are allowed to say you, that you can be proud about. That you can consider yourself worthy of Kovod. Because Hashem Yisborach thinks you're worthy of Kovod. So much so, you can say you. That's real Kovod. Now you can feel good about yourself. The fact that President Obama wants to meet you, I'm not so sure. The fact that Hashem Yisborach allows you to call you you, that's choshev.